tell me a little bit more about how you got into that and like what your day-to-day looked like. Was it seeking out new technologies? Was it developing your own? And were they, I guess, were they mission specific? I go in whichever way you find more relevant.
Yeah. So a lot of people don't understand that the acquisitions program for the military is an extremely robust and complicated process. And a lot of time it's based off something called JCIDS, the Joint Capabilities Integration Development System, which was originally established by the Secretary of Defense. It was McNamara back in the 1960s. And the JCIDS process mirrored the Soviet acquisition and development pipeline because we wanted to be able to outpace the Soviets, but we didn't want to escalate the Cold War. So that the system was literally designed to not move too fast. And that worked okay until about 2000. In 2000, the ability for the manufacturing of chips for the private companies, expansion of computers, suddenly the private sector, not the national security sector, like the national laboratories, the Department of Energy laboratories, Department of Defense laboratories, private sector was now in the lead when it came to technological development. And they could use venture capital funding to move much faster than the government could. And so now the JCIDS process, which relied on these limited timelines and milestones and fiscal year defense plans and POMs, which go into like 5-year periods of time, was not going to cut what needed to happen at the speed of technology. And so these reactive processes within JCIDS that said, hey, we've recognized there's a delta and this is the thing that we're trying to solve for. Let me put some money behind it. We have funding in 2 years to pay for this thing that you've identified now. And so we would jokingly say, that's how you get 2016 technology just in time in 2024. And so my job then was to say, okay, well, look, you guys have already recognized through the requirements process that you need this technology. However, that's because you have recognized a capability gap, not because you've recognized the value of technology. Whether it be an event or a requirement, they're both reactive in nature. How do we regain the proactive aspect of chasing down research and development, science and technology solutions? And so what I did in my job is I said, okay, I'm going to watch. My job is to watch everyone's technological blind side. I'm going to watch their flank by looking for emerging technology. But because of my operational experience and my background, I could see it from a different lens. And so when I first got into the job, I was handpicked by my predecessor. He's like, I really want you to come in and take this position after I'm done. So I stepped in 2016, and I was very intimidated because they were doing a lot of projects building these different types of aircraft payloads on small. When I say aircraft, they're small aircraft. They're what are called a Group 2 UAS, which means they're about under 50 pounds. But we were putting these 5-pound sensor payloads on the back of it so that you could do different types of missions in addition to the camera. So the bird could be flying up and doing a whole bunch of different missions at the same time. But it was a small bird, so you could do it organically. Well, those payloads were having all kinds of impact and doing a lot of great stuff. However, there was a lot more we could be chasing, and we specifically wanted to start playing with quadcopters. Remind you, this is 2016. So they were on the market, but they hadn't proliferated as much. And the only thing we kept thinking about was, this is going to be the future of warfare, and we need to be ready for it. How do we get there? And so the first thing I did is I basically did an education campaign, or a campaign of learning for myself. They gave me a travel budget and said I could go wherever I wanted, except for they weren't going to give me a budget to actually fund any projects or do any work. And I was like, well, that sounds great. So I could go places and learn things, but I can't do anything according to what you just said. However, There was no limitation for me using other people's money. If I could get somebody else to pay for things, I could literally do whatever I want. So my claim to fame was, by the time I left in 2022, I had put the first artificially intelligent drone in combat. I had built a portfolio of more than 40 different projects, and I had built up more than $400 million of other people's money. And on top of that, I'd created some programs that were close to nearly $1 billion in their evaluation estimate of what they total were.
Well, and what does it mean to create $1 billion program? Does that mean you're getting funding to create that program, or the program you create somehow generates those funds?
It was a program that was allocated that much money from Congress.
Okay. So you would create a program that you think is necessary for X mission or X objective, and then you would get a congressman on your side to go and and they decide how
Not a
important this is and how
congressman.
much funding, or
So you
someone?
get, usually it's done, the way that's done through the military is combatant commands like SOCOM or INDOPACOM, which is in charge of the Pacific. Those kind of commands have the authority to request larger amounts of money from the government. All money that goes to the Department of Defense has to be appropriated through Congress.
Right.
All of it, right? But not a congressman, not an individual. It's the committees have to allow for the budget, and it
Yeah,
gets
I thought
appropriated
you
the
would
budget.
need like a sponsor to bring something to the, I don't know,
The
the,
sponsor is that combatant command leadership, and then them
okay.
asking Congress, and then the Office of Secretary of Defense, and the Office of Secretary of Defense then presents it to Congress eventually. But if they've already appropriated a certain amount of money for their discretionary use, it also could be divvied out that way. There's another way the money could be put out. But then there's also what they refer to as colors of money. So money can only be used for certain use cases. So a color of money would be like research and development, procurement, operations and maintenance, or what's called DERMO, which is Defense Reutilization Management Order, which is another, it's a fancy way of saying throwing things away. So the process of creating new stuff, buying new things, fixing things, or throwing things away, each is a color of money. So if I have maintenance money, I can't use it to do research and development. It's against the law. If I have procurement money, I can't use it to throw things away. So the money has to be specifically used because Congress has only allowed it to be used a certain way. And that avoids, it's an ethical thing. And so R&D is like the golden goose money. You can literally use it to do whatever you want, because you could buy things, you could pay for labor, you could create new things, you can prototype it. What you can't do is sustain it. So if I build a prototype and the prototype works with R&D, I can't use R&D to continue building prototypes, that exact same prototype, because it's done. If I'm adding new capability to it, then maybe, but if I'm just creating more of them, I have to use procurement money